Warren Buffett borrowed $25 to buy his first stock at age 11. Today, he's worth over $140 billion. The gap between those two numbers isn't luck. It's a rule book about debt most people never see. And the wildest part, he's been telling us the whole time. Here's what nobody mentions when they talk about Buffett's billions. It's not that he avoided debt, it's that he treated it like a weapon that could kill him if he held it wrong. While the rest of Wall Street was leveraging everything in sight, Buffett quietly built an empire on 5 principles that sound boring until you realize they're the only reason he survived every crash, every bubble, every moment when the market tried to eat him alive. Let's start with the first rule, the one that separates amateurs from people who actually stay rich. Never borrow money to buy something that goes down in value. Sounds obvious, right? But walk through any American suburb and count the $60,000 trucks in the driveways, financed, depreciating 20% the second they left the lot. Buffett calls this financial suicide in slow motion. If it drops in value, you pay cash or you don't buy it, period. Here's why this matters more than you think. Every dollar you borrow costs you twice. Once when you pay it back, and again in all the interest that piles on top. So when you finance a car, a boat, or anything that loses value, you're not just losing money on the asset, you're paying extra for the privilege of watching it become worthless. Buffett learned this early. He saw people bury themselves financing things that made them look rich while keeping them broke. He went the other way. In the 1960s, when his friends were buying Cadillacs on credit, Buffett drove a Volkswagen Beetle, paid cash, kept it for years. People thought he was cheap. He thought they were insane, because while they were making car payments, he was buying stocks. The Beetle didn't appreciate, but it didn't bury him either. And the stocks, those compounded. This isn't about being frugal for the sake of it. It's about understanding opportunity cost. Every payment you make on a depreciating asset is a payment you're not making on something that could actually grow. Buffett didn't get rich by avoiding nice things. He got rich by refusing to let nice things steal his capital. Which brings us to rule 2. Only borrow when the return is guaranteed to exceed the cost. Not hoped, not expected. Guaranteed. This is where most people lose the game before they even start playing. Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, borrows billions, but never without a plan that's basically bulletproof. When he takes on debt, he knows exactly how it's getting paid back and exactly how much profit sits on top. There's no gambling, no fingers crossed. The math works or the deal doesn't happen. Compare that to how most people use debt. Credit cards at 22% interest to cover expenses they can't afford. Student loans for degrees that might lead to jobs, mortgages stretched so thin that one missed paycheck starts a collapse. Buffett would call that hope, not strategy. And hope, in his world, is not a financial plan. Here's the test he uses. If you borrow $100,000, can you point to exactly where the $120,000 payback is coming from? Not in theory. In reality, if the answer is anything other than a clear yes, the debt is a trap. This is why he finances businesses, not lifestyles. A factory produces revenue, a jet ski produces Instagram photos and payments. During the 2008 financial crisis, Buffett made some of the best deals of his life. He loaned billions to companies like Goldman Sachs and General Electric. But he didn't do it out of charity. He structured the deals so that even if everything went sideways, he still made money. Preferred shares, guaranteed dividends, warrants that let him buy stock cheap later. He lent money the way a shark hunts, precisely and without mercy. That's the difference. Buffett doesn't borrow to keep up appearances. He borrows to multiply capital, and he only does it when the return isn't just likely, it's locked in. Now, most people hear these 2 rules and think, great, so I'll never borrow money again. Wrong. That's not what Buffett does, and it's not what he's saying. There's a 3rd rule, one that flips the whole conversation. But it only works if you understand something most people get backwards about how debt actually functions. Because here's what nobody tells you. Debt isn't the enemy. Stupid debt is the enemy. And the line between the two? That's where fortunes get made or destroyed. Buffett knows exactly where that line is. He's walked it for 70 years without falling off. And what sits on the other side of that line is the part that changes everything. Rule 3. Use other people's money to control assets you couldn't otherwise afford, but only if those assets generate their own payments. This is where Buffett separates himself from almost everyone else. He doesn't use debt to buy things. He uses it to buy income streams. And that shift in thinking is everything. Take Berkshire's purchase of BNSF Railway in 2009, $44 billion deal, one of the largest acquisitions in history. Buffett didn't write a check for the full amount, he structured it. He borrowed strategically, used Berkshire's cash for part of it, and let the railway's own revenue cover the rest. Within years, BNSF was generating billions in profit annually. The debt didn't drain him. The asset paid for itself and then kept paying. That's the model. You're not borrowing to own something. You're borrowing to control something that works for you. Most people do the opposite. They finance a home they live in, a car they drive, a couch they sit on. None of those things produce income. They produce payments. Buffett finances cash flow, apartment buildings, businesses, infrastructure, things with tenants, customers, users. The debt gets serviced by the asset itself, not by his salary or savings. He's not on the hook. The investment is. Here's the difference in real terms. If you borrow $500,000 to buy a house you live in, you're responsible for every mortgage payment. Your job has to cover it. Your budget has to stretch. One bad month and you're stressed. But if you borrow $500,000 to buy a rental property that generates $4,000 a month and your mortgage is $3,200, the building is covering itself. You're using the bank's money to control an asset that pays you $800 a month. Buffett would call that leverage. The other version, that's just expensive ownership. And this doesn't only apply to real estate. Buffett uses the same logic with insurance. Berkshire owns massive insurance companies. Policyholders pay premiums up front. Claims get paid later. In between, Buffett has billions in what he calls float, money that isn't technically his, but that he gets to invest. He borrows it at 0% interest, deploys it into stocks and businesses, and keeps the profit. It's debt without the downside, and it's completely legal. That's the genius. He's not afraid of using money that isn't his. He's just disciplined about what he does with it. He never uses it to look rich. He uses it to become richer. Most people borrow to buy the appearance of wealth. Buffett borrows to buy the machinery that produces it. Now let's zoom out. These 3 rules sound simple, and they are. But simple doesn't mean easy, because applying them requires something most people aren't willing to do. You have to say no constantly. No to the nicer car, no to the bigger house, no to looking successful before you actually are. Buffett's been saying no for decades, and every no compounded into a yes that actually mattered. He still lives in the house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. It's worth maybe $1.4 million today. Meanwhile, his net worth is over $100 billion. He could buy a different mansion in every state, but he doesn't, because that's not the game he's playing. The game isn't about spending money. It's about keeping it in motion, working, multiplying. And here's what makes it brutal. You won't see the results right away. Saying no to a $60,000 truck today doesn't feel like winning. Investing that money instead and watching it sit there for 5 years doesn't feel like progress. But Buffett didn't get rich in 5 years. He got rich in 50. And the decisions he made in his 20s are the reason he's untouchable now. Most people never make it that far because they can't delay gratification long enough to see compounding take over. They finance the lifestyle first and hope the wealth catches up. Buffett did it backwards. He built the wealth first. The lifestyle never mattered, and that's the part nobody wants to hear. You can't look like Buffett and build like Buffett at the same time. You have to choose. So here's the real question. Are you borrowing to look like you've made it, or are you borrowing to actually make it? Because one of those paths leads to payments. The other leads to compounding. And the gap between them is wider than most people will ever admit. Buffett's 3 rules aren't about avoiding debt. They're about weaponizing it. Never borrow for things that lose value. Only borrow when the return beats the cost. And use other people's money to control assets that pay for themselves. Follow those, and debt becomes a tool. Ignore them, and it becomes a trap. The market doesn't care which one you choose, but your future will. The difference between Buffett and everyone else isn't intelligence. It's patience. It's the ability to watch your neighbor pull up in a finance Range Rover while you're still driving something reasonable. It's sitting on cash while everyone around you is leveraging into the next hot thing. It's knowing that looking poor today is the price of being rich tomorrow. Most people won't do it. They'll finance the life they want now and spend the next 30 years paying for it. Buffett financed the future he wanted and let everything else wait. That's not a strategy, that's a religion, and the results speak for themselves. So ask yourself this: what are you actually building? Because if the answer involves payments on things that don't pay you back, you're not building anything. You're renting a lifestyle you can't afford with money you don't have. And that's not wealth. That's just expensive pretending. Buffett's rules are simple. They're not sexy. They won't make you feel rich next week. But follow them long enough, and you won't need to feel rich. You'll just be rich. And by then, nobody will care what you drive.